Hi, Katie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey, just
Hi.
give me 1 second here. Sorry, I was having some issues logging in.
No worries. Yeah, that's why I got the nice farmer's market display.
Yay.
Hey, everyone. We'll let people trickle in. I bet a lot of people were in the moving session earlier, the 15-minute kind of break, physical.
That would have been a good place to be. I know my puppy was wanting it. He's been running around the house.
So it looks like we've got a handful of other folks still in the waiting room, so we'll just hang tight. Pressure's on, Joe. They keep coming in.
I can help.
Okay, I'm gonna take deep breaths. Try not to hyperventilate.
I'll watch that too. I can see it too. I'll take it.
I years ago did a TV interview with a mayor here in Lansing, and we walked around a market at the time. Like it's a 45-minute like us touring the market. They still air it randomly on like random PBS channels. And I got comments the other day about like, I saw you at this market. It's been 10 years. It's been 10 years.
You're famous, Joe. You gotta figure out how to live with it, you know?
Yeah, I'll have to try.
Julie, so should we keep waiting for folks to get in or just go ahead and kick it off?
It's all you.
Okay, all right, here we go, folks. I'm gonna start by sharing my screen. We'll go into presentation mode. How's that look? Can you see it, everybody?
Yeah, that looks good.
Awesome. So thanks for joining us today, everybody, to talk about EBT technology, which is near and dear to both Joe and my hearts. We spend a lot of time, Joe especially, solving problems related to EBT technology. So we're here to sort of just talk through some of the things that we've been encountering, sort of sharing some of the challenges with you all, and hopefully get a sense of where you see gaps and you see the need for resources, either with your own organization or those who work with you, because EBT technology, as we know, is not so plain and not so simple. So I'll just say a quick word about FMC. My name is Katie Myrie. I am the Farm Direct Technology Manager for FMC. We're a nationwide 501c3. We work to support farmers markets across the US so that they can do what they do best, which is serve as assets for the community, provide income opportunities for farmers, and ensure that everyone from every community can access fresh local produce affordably. So this position with FMC is relatively new, and my job is to sort of create resources for folks who work in Farm Direct and want to know more about making better decisions around technology, and it's sort of taking a broad scan of the field to see what sort of technology is emerging and how that may affect farmers market operators. So I'll turn it over to Joe to say a couple words about himself and MIFMA, who's a close partner of ours, and he can tell you a little bit about his work that he does in Michigan.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. So I'm Joe Lasowski, and I work with the Michigan Farmers Market Association. So we're based here in Michigan, and we are a statewide membership-based nonprofit supporting farmers markets and the farmers and vendors who sell there. And we work with and for farmers market organizers, managers, farmers, vendors, and friends to create a thriving marketplace for local food and farm products. And we're really excited to be in this partnership with FMC and the Ecology Center and working within the hub. And as Katie said, I'm the food access director. I've been working with EBT technology, both in the market setting and now more overall in a statewide setting for over a decade now. And a lot has changed and a lot is changing. And I'm happy to try and share some of my knowledge and hard-earned knocks with you guys so that you don't repeat the same stumbles that I've had.
You're here. Thanks, Joe. So we thought we'd just do a quick little poll here to kick it off to see who we're working with today. So who's in the session? The first question that we have is how many this is backwards. Here we go. How many farm direct sites do you work directly with? So maybe you don't work with any, that's fine, but we know that we're working with groups that deal all the way up from 0 to networks. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch that poll and we'll see what we're looking at in our group here. Great.
This is a great spread.
Yeah, definitely. You can see it too, Joe. Or I guess
Yeah.
maybe everybody can see it. Okay, great. Okay, I'll give it another few seconds and then we'll go ahead and close the poll.
We really want to thank everyone for joining us today. We think we're the most important session of I'm kidding. The entire convening is going to be great.
Yeah.
Oh, Lucy said that they can't see the results, so we'll make sure those get shared out when we close the poll. Lucy, thanks.
Great.
Oh, yes, and
Sounds
Dar's
great.
correct. Please, a reminder to everyone as they join in to use the Zoom chat for any of your questions. We will be answering those as we go through. This is going to be very much a conversational presentation, and it would be like sitting in a meeting with Katie and myself.
Which is a lot of fun. So we hope we're going to have some fun today. Okay, so can everyone see the poll results? We've got a good spread. 10% or 20% of folks are working with no farm direct sites. 30% are between 1 and 10 farm direct sites. 20% are between 11 and 24, and 30% are 25 or more. So the majority is you're working with a lot of farm direct sites, which is great. So I'm sure you have a ton of experiences that you could share with us and throughout the group about technology challenges that you're facing. Yeah, so that's great. Thanks for weighing in on that, and we'll keep on rolling. Okay. So Joe's going to kick it off to just give a brief introduction in case anyone doesn't know about the process to apply for EBT benefits or SNAP.
Right.
Yeah.
So we like to start with the basics just in case anyone is, missed any of this information. But in order to participate in a SNAP incentive or a nutrition incentive program, the site needs to be a SNAP retailer, which is a process you do through the USDA FNS, so Food and Nutrition Services Program. And the application is all online. We've got the link there at the top for you to, you can always view that. The process is it's like doing your taxes. It looks a little intimidating. It's really not that bad. Katie, if you want to go ahead and switch the page quick. So yeah, so again, there's just that application. FNS then, once they approve the application, you are given a 7-digit FNS permit number. At this point, for at least farm stands and farmers markets, everyone just about gets a number that starts with the number 0. So good way to know that that's going on. And in fact, everyone I've been seeing lately is a 07, at least here in Michigan. And of course, SNAP has a retail service center line for anybody to call, 877-823-4369 if you need any support there. Just a reminder, you won't get anyone live when you call that number. You'll have to leave a message and they call back. And Dara's right, that is an important number. And you'll be calling it often if you have questions. That's kind of their big number to give a call to. So if you do ever have questions about trying to work through this process, please reach out to me or someone else at the TA Hub. We're happy to help walk you through that process as best we can.
Great, thanks, Joe. So sort of the theme that we take when we're talking about EBT technology and what we're going to take today is that choosing the right EBT technology doesn't often start with the technology itself. It actually starts with how your business model works, how your farmer's market works, and what your needs are. I think a lot of folks, want to, with technology in general, we want to chase the best option right away before we sometimes know what our own constraints are. So the resources that we've created, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, they really focus on the process before you choose the technology, not the nitty-gritty tech specs of the technology itself. So that's just, keep that in mind throughout our conversation today, not starting with the technology itself, but instead the constraints of your model. So Joe and I have been working for the last couple months on creating sort of suite of resources. And again, it's all about that process. We really want you or your farm direct markets to really engage in the process where they know, sort of what features of their model will affect their technology down the road. So we'll talk about things like connectivity. We'll talk about the scale of the market. If the market knows all of those features of their business model, they'll be in a much better place to look through the technology and understand what might be right for them. So this is a screenshot of one of the resources that we've created. It's the discovery process for choosing EBT technology. This is sort of, the not so fun, long process document that could save you a lot of headaches down the road. So the way we phrase it is, we just have a ton of questions that we want markets to ask themselves or your organization to ask the market. And it could be used for TA providers could use this document and sort of sitting with a farmer's market operator and looking through, asking them, working through some of the questions around their model, or it could be used just by a farmer or a farm direct farmer's market operator themselves. And linked up here are the variety of resources that we have created, which we'll link later. Today, we're going to dive really deeply into the common mistakes because we think that'll be a great conversation starter for a lot of y'all. And I'm sure that you've seen some of these mistakes, and they're not always, they're often not the market operator's fault. So the word mistakes we use very loosely. So without further ado, let's get into it. So top 7 mistakes that markets make with EBT tech. And again, this is based on Joe and my experience, mostly Joe's experience. So, it's not comprehensive. And we'd love for you all to just jump into the chat if you think of things that are missing or if you have experiences to share. We'd love to keep it active. So the first one is that you've decided to live in a really cold place like Minnesota, like me, or Michigan, like Joe, and you struggle with temperature fluctuations. So then I'll introduce these mistakes, and then Joe's got some stories to share about how this has affected markets that he's worked with. So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so this is always a fun one because we do have markets here in Michigan that operate year round. And while we don't get quite as cold as Minnesota, Michigan can get fairly cold in the winter, definitely down into the 0 degrees or slightly colder. And not all technology, really any technology, is designed to work at those cold temperatures. So the first thing is always, to watch the battery, because those are usually the first things to go when a device starts freezing up. Also, if you're using a program, a mobile app that's able to take SNAP benefits, so you're using something like Total Pay, your phone tends to get a little more brittle as it gets cold. So an also fun tip, when your iPhone freezes, because I don't know what Apple was thinking, they don't have a notice for when it gets too cold. It just thinks that it's gotten too hot. So the phone will actually say that it's overheated and then it'll shut off.
Looks like we've got a market in Arizona with the opposite problem. So yeah. And Joe, can you talk about how markets in your experience have avoided that, or how they've problem solved for having a device that's getting too cold?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that some of our ingenious market managers have done is they create what I call like a hot box, and they just create a small, slightly insulated container that they can put their device in. And then they put in, cups of hot water if they have access to that, or hand warmers are always my favorite, to just try and keep the air around the device when it's not in use, warmer than at least it would be when it's outside of that box. So it does tend to help, especially on days when it's not super cold. And of course, that box always helps control it or protect it against any snow or wind. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. And some batteries, I'd recommend also, Googling the device that you think meets your criteria, Google and see what kind of battery it has. Sometimes there are batteries that perform better in colder weather. Generally, anything below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, it's going to be tough to deal with. So that's sort of the general rule, but some perform a little bit better in colder weather. Great. Are we good with that one? Should we move on to number 2?
Yeah, I think we're ready to move on. And I love all of these ideas that are coming into the chat box. Sounds like we're not the only ones who deal with these issues.
I guess we're not introducing anything new, so sorry. Y'all are experts already. The second one is that you didn't check your cellular connectivity first. Rural or urban, you didn't look into whether or not the specific area that you are operating your market in has connection. So Joe, tell us what markets face around this one and how they might solve that problem.
Yeah, so actually, one of those famous things is that you look at the coverage map and you totally look like you're covered and you're good to go. And then you get the device to market and you're not. So specifically, like if you're in an urban setting and you're next to like high-rise buildings that are brick, cell tower or cell service doesn't like to bend around buildings. So that does tend to be a challenge. And then I had a farmer one time who had just built this gorgeous brand new farm stand for him to sell out of, and got a new wireless snap device, and realized that his metal roof on his new building was blocking the cell service from coming in. So in that case, we got very lucky and we had the 30-day trial, or he had the 30-day trial, and was able to transition to equipment that would work for him. And so that's kind of the challenge there. If you can find someone who already has equipment in your area, and I usually tell people too, like even at a minimum, if you can just take a cell phone that's running on the same tower, or that same cell service, and at least test that and make sure that you can download or you can access YouTube or the weather radar, something that has a little more high data usage than just a text message. That usually will help give you an idea of what's going to happen while you're at market. But of course, we live in a world where things are not always easy and equal. So sometimes in those settings, even though you think everything's perfect, you do need hotspots in a different, just outside the market to help support that access. Which sadly means more fees.
So with that being said, we're going to do our second poll and just get a sense of how many of your sites are reporting these issues. We hear about them a lot, so we were just curious if that experience reflected more widely what folks are seeing. Whoops. Why can't I? There we go. So I will go ahead and launch poll number 2.
I just freaked out. I looked at the time and thought we only had 15 more minutes to complete this.
Better get cracking here.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a widespread again. So
yeah.
Oh man. I would have liked to have seen it all in the have not in the past 2 years, but
yeah, I'm very jealous of any site that has not heard of anything in the last 2 years. That's amazing.
Okay, we'll give it another few seconds.
Oh, so Alyssa actually just popped a great question into the chat. I had mentioned that there was a vendor using a Snap device. So Alyssa, that was a slip of the tongue. It was a farmer. And so in my world, because I was a market manager for so long, farmers and vendors are kind of interchangeable to me. So this farmer had his own stand at home, and did not attend any markets. And so here in Michigan, I do support them as well, both with getting equipment and getting applied for SNAP EBT as a retailer, and then also getting them into our nutrition incentive program, Double Up Food Box. And if we do have time at the end of this, I'd be happy to wrap around and talk a little bit about my experience of and my thoughts around individual vendors versus the central market model. If we have time.
Yeah, that'll be it. And we'll talk about state equipment programs at the end as well. Yeah, so this is a big issue for a lot of you, monthly reporting of outages or equipment failures. This is why, we do what we do and we try to front load some of these mistakes. It's not always related to cellular connectivity. It can have to do with, 3G phasing out or, pieces associated with that. So there's ways that, we can keep sort of proactively informed of some of this information to try to avoid it, but a lot of it's unavoidable at times and it's frustrating. So we're there to support markets who are going through it. And yeah, this is why we recommend to check connectivity upfront, so you sort of know what you're dealing with, because nearly 50% of you all said that monthly it's an issue. So Joe, anything else to add to that?
No, I think we've covered it.
Okay. So we'll get on to number 3, sort of related to outages, manual voucher clearing. Clearing manual vouchers is really crucial for markets who have devices that experience outages, or making sure that you've got a backup in case there's some sort of failure in the system. With EBT, it's such a we have a webinar actually with a man named Peter Relic, who explains sort of the system, the infrastructure through which EBT transactions are processed. And if you know anything about that process, there's tons of jumps that need to happen, which is why it takes so much connectivity power, which means there's a lot of places the transaction could go wrong. So it's not always the fault of the device or the EBT card holder, or the connectivity. It may be happening for a variety of reasons. So this is why folks need to clear manual vouchers. And Joe will talk a little bit about sort of what he's experienced on that side.
Yeah, so I had a market that they, working with a bank partner, had gotten, they'd become a SNAP retailer. And the bank was providing this great new equipment. They were super excited, had asked me about it. I knew nothing. There's a lot of different devices out there, and my focus tends to be in a slightly smaller area. And so here they had this great new device. And of course, day one at the market, they had some issues, and it just wasn't connecting correctly. So they had, their manual voucher papers, and they started calling in all of their transactions for the day, and they did, X amount of dollars. So they take the device back to the office, get it plugged into a machine to get the update, whatever was missing. And they go to type in all the vouchers that they had done during the market day so they could clear them through the system, only to realize that their device didn't accept them. And so there was no way to actually manually type in that information into their device. That was a miss with the software development. So they had quite the issue of them trying to get those cleared, and had to work with their third-party processor and the bank to try and get that to all happen. So, that tends to be not always a huge issue, but definitely something that you want to know. And that's something that's important, especially for farmers markets and farmers, when, due to bad weather or due to, our rural or weird locations that markets happen in, like sometimes like the devices just don't work, or if it's too cold and the battery just won't charge, we need to have those backup options. We learned that day that not every device could do that, and that's something we definitely want to watch out for.
Definitely. And again, this is knowing that you'll need to process manual vouchers is something that you need to ask your third-party processor, and asking that question is so crucial. So number 4, slightly related to this, there are a lot of cool new terminals coming out, especially with COVID-19 and all these, mobile payments needing to happen, curbside pickup. So it can be tempting to go for that new smart terminal, which we think of as the PAX A920, the Clover Flex. But sometimes they require a point of sale app, which is software that requires additional funds to purchase on a monthly subscription. So sometimes people get seduced by the idea of these features and then all of a sudden they have to pay. So yeah, go ahead, Joe. Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, so I'm lucky and have not dealt directly with anyone who has had this issue yet, but I did hear a story of a market somewhere else who had decided with their grant funding to buy a device off of Amazon instead of through the third-party processor because they found a deal and then worked with a third-party processor to get it activated, and did not realize that by going around the third-party processor for the equipment, had to pay to download the sales app because it wasn't part of this that setup, and then really struggled from there, just to continue to make things work and continue to have challenges that way. So sadly, not one of my best stories, but definitely something that we need to keep an eye out for.
Yeah. So this is somewhat related. Sometimes that you don't have a clear understanding from your processor what the fees associated with your account are. So we really recommend. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to take your thunder here, Joe.
Go for it.
Okay. Again, this is why knowing the terms, knowing sort of what to expect through the process and knowing what you'll be required to pay for ahead of time is so crucial. So we have at FMC, we have a snap guide that goes through a lot of pieces of the process. And as a part of that page, we have an explanation of common charges. I'd highly recommend you refer to that and familiarize yourself or the Farm Direct site. Make sure that they understand those charges really, really carefully, because then they can dispute something if it was unexpected and they weren't aware of it, and they can have a quote. Having a sample invoice, for example, or a quote of the monthly fee will be a great negotiating tool for that. So there are plenty of surprises. It's not just as simple as buy the device and then pay a percentage of, or whatever the model may be, a percentage of each dollar spent. There are PCI compliance fees. There are account access fees there, and every processor is different, so it doesn't make sense for us to go through those today. But we just really want to caution you all in that process and make sure your farmers markets are really understanding that going in, just as you would for anything in your personal life too.
Yeah, and one of the other things I've learned about fees, especially if you're in a program that will help pay for fees, every once in a while they change the name or the codes associated with those fees. And they like to then sneak through and you get charged for it. So don't ever be afraid to reach out to your processing company and ask what a fee is for. Get that clarification and figure out if it's something you actually need to be paying for or just something they added to your bill.
Okay, so sort of related to buying a brand new fancy smart device. Sometimes in the opposite way, you find out that you buy a device that's going to go out of date soon. And Joe has a lot of personal experience with this one because he's worked with a lot of folks dealing with one of the first data devices. So I'll let him share a little bit about his experience with this mistake.
Yeah, so anybody very popular for some of the, I'm going to call it older, but not as old as you think, Snap technology, the wireless processing devices are running on 3G networks. 3G is getting shut down, everyone. Nationwide, this is going away, and probably soon, within the next year or so. So this is not even a processor company option, they are getting cut out as well. The cell phone companies are just shutting this down. So here in Michigan, one of our popular devices was the FD410. I know it's been pretty popular at some other markets throughout the state or throughout the country. And they, we kind of got the heads up. They quit distributing the machine in June, and I thought, oh, good. We have a year and a half. Like I was doing some research. We've got tons of time. Like we're going to be able to go through this like nice, easy transition to new equipment. And then things steamrolled quickly. And then I ended up at the end of the year having 2 weeks to try and transition everyone who was still open in January. So not the time you want to be trying to transition markets. Definitely something to like let your markets know that well before their market season starts or their, the growing season starts, make sure their equipment is checked and working, because you don't want to get to the day before and find out that it's not going to happen. Or for my few, sites that got that new equipment in May and found out in June that it was, going out of date. So challenges, it's tough to, kind of guess what technology is going to do. And so that's what me and Katie are here to try and let you know when we see these things coming. So 3G network now is bad. If you see 3G, like start asking questions.
Yeah, and the nutrition incentive hub as a whole, we try to, the network is where we draw our power, right? So staying in network with markets, in your area and across the US, that's where we, the practitioners, you all a part of this call, you know a lot of the information, and across the network we can figure out that faster. So there's, we're trying to stay one step ahead, but with technology things change, and sometimes there's just no avoiding challenges like this. You just have to make the best of it and call Joe. That's what they all say, right? Okay, our last one.
I love Slack for that too. Slack's a good way to give me information and also let other people know too.
So this last one is sort of related to a few that we've mentioned, but again, you buy a new device that has too many features for your market, and eventually you can't afford to keep using it. So the equivalent of buying too much house for your needs, it's the same sort of thing. We want to make sure that you know what exactly you need, and you're only paying for the features that you need. You're not paying for that additional, fancy stylus system that, I don't know, I'm just speaking here, but make sure that that's why we recommend the processes, so you know what you need, so you're not bogged down by a cost that isn't, that dollars are spent not on your model, but rather on this fancy device. Joe, do you have any thoughts to add on that one?
I just luckily this is one that I've been able to stop people before they purchase items that are too big for but it's like looking at the fees. If your market's not going to accept credit or debit cards, like make sure there are no fees getting charged you for things like that. You, as a farmer's market manager and program, most likely you don't need a full register, so you shouldn't be paying for any services where you're keeping track of like how many fruits and vegetables or how many dairy something you're selling, because you're just doing token or script transactions. You just want to make sure that you're I like to call it right sizing the equipment for you. You also don't you don't need the flashiest device at a farmer's market if it's not going to help you. Like, I mean, if you get a choice between a $2,000 device and a $700 device that are essentially going to do the same thing, I mean, let's all be smart. Let's use our money wisely and use that extra $1,300 to buy fancier tokens or something.
Yeah, and just the mindset of starting simple and upgrading if you need additional features. So, buy what you need. And I think the biggest example, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is, folks who really need more robust reporting features. That's where the big upgrade becomes a question. And that's the point where I think, you have to really weigh, does the upgrade make sense for your market? So we're going to talk, I'm going to skip that one right now and go right into the token-based system, or maybe we should pause a second and just ask for questions. Is there anyone who wants to share other experiences that, want to flag anything in the chat, or have any questions right now on those sort of 7 core mistakes?
So a few things that I've picked out from the chat, Katie. Megan mentioned that their FD410s looked like they were going to continue to work until they just didn't, which is the same thing we were noticing with some of ours, Megan. And then I found out why that was happening. Communication with the server was how they were shutting people off. And then Elizabeth talked about that FNS rules require that you are able to refund SNAP tokens to a customer's at a customer's request, which is absolutely true and something we should be doing. We need to be doing. Yet not all devices can run a refund transaction, and that I did not know. So even I'm learning something yet today. So thank you, Elizabeth. That's another thing that we'll have to add in there, maybe with the manual transactions, that it has all the FNS required transaction types or something.
So I'm just going to open up the Q&A. I think I can do that. Meanwhile, I think we'll just keep going because we only have about 10 minutes and I want to make sure we're getting through the rest. And then, so Joe and I will share a little bit. We have a couple other things to emphasize, and then we should have a few minutes for questions. So I'm going to try to figure out how to do that really quickly. Does anyone have any tips for that? Oh, okay. Just a verbal announcement. Cool. Questions in the chat. Thanks, Julie. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to talk sort of about a broader scan of the field just really quickly. Some of you are, many of you, like you said, are operating at the network level. So you're interested maybe in some of these network-based reporting, maybe token-based system, or loyalty card-based systems that replace the need for tokens. Farm direct sites across the country are very interested in these new technologies, but what we've seen is they're not so ubiquitous yet. They're just piloting in a variety of places. And they're pretty expensive still for folks. So, it does make sense for some markets who are operating, a network of markets, and they have to pay a staff person to crank a system that counts tokens manually for 6 hours a week. And that may be at the point where it makes sense to look into something like this. But it's also just important to sort of know what's out there and what might be a few steps ahead of us in the field. So we're just going to briefly share about Healthy Ways and Epic Technologies, which are the two that I know of that are offering farm direct farmers market token replacement systems. Healthy Ways is a part of Merchant Source, who's been around for a long time in the farm direct field. And it's really, the basis of a token replacement system is that they're replacing the physical tokens with a loyalty card, which you can swipe at the market and load balance onto. And then you go redeem those points or those dollars on your loyalty card at various market stands. This is an upgrade that will require markets, farmers, and vendors to have a smartphone where they can take a photo and download an app in order to process that transaction. We won't get too into the nitty-gritties of it, but that's essentially how it works. There's a little photo there that shows you what the interface could look like for some folks. And they still require a point of sale device. So you'll still see the terminal, the pin pad. It's nothing too different from what we're used to in that sense. But like I said, the loyalty card is the big difference. And this is the same for Epic Technologies. They're working with a handful of pilot sites on sort of like an iPad based system where you can have a kiosk and customers can come up and load balances onto their their loyalty cards, which they can then spend around the market. So if you're interested in these options, feel free to reach out to these companies. They are looking for partners, and they're starting to share these technologies more widely. So I'd recommend you work directly with them and figure out if it may be right for markets in your network. We'll talk quickly about funding these programs. I think we have enough time for that. I'm just going to launch this poll while Joe starts talking a bit about that.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Thanks, Katie. So we've been talking a lot about SNAP equipment. That's what this entire presentation has been about. And the great thing is that many states throughout our country have stepped up and are supporting farmers markets and farm stand operators, so our farm direct friends, with either no cost or low cost SNAP EBT equipment. And so some partners of ours have created this great map. Of course, as with anything government, it does change from time to time, so this should be updated as of now, but I will never guarantee that. So definitely, if you see that your state is, operating a program where you can get equipment, you should reach out to who's in charge of that program in your state. If you don't know who that is, you can do some research on your own, or we'd be happy. I think actually, Farmers Market Coalition has a website that can help direct some of that. Is that what? Just got, okay. Eitherwise, if that's something that you need some help with, we'd love to help direct people to how they can get equipment. There is also a federal program, which I think is my next slide.
Yep.
Yes. So there's a federal program, Market Link. Oh, great. So most people in this program or in this webinar today have state EBT equipment. That's amazing. So, and then, yeah, so then your backup is Market Link, which is the federal program, which is currently partnered with Novadia Group and the Total Pay software. So I know we are running out of time. Katie and I are always happy to talk and connect you to Market Link if that's a cycle you want, or a direction you would like to head. And of course, we are, always hoping that more and more states will continue to jump onto the bandwagon with sponsored equipment. Yes, so I think we're going to head to the chat for the next few minutes. If there's more questions coming in, I'm feeling very scatterbrained at the moment.
Somebody asked about online SNAP processing for retailers and farmers markets. We haven't received any big updates on that so far from FNS. We're watching it very carefully, and we, it's not necessarily a question of the technology capabilities. We know that companies are really excited to offer this to markets. We're just sort of waiting for better clarity from FNS. So unfortunately, we don't know a lot to share on that. Joe, do you have anything you want to emphasize with online SNAP? No.
We're seeing some federal money go in to help support. But yeah, this is a marathon, not a sprint, especially for us markets. It's going to be a ways down the road yet. Don't be expecting it for the 2021 season. And I think even trying to get us up and running in 2022 for a majority of sites is a big dream. And probably it'll be a little longer than that. I did want to mention earlier when we had been talking about manual vouchers, there was a question on how to access, how to get the correct manual vouchers. So for anyone who doesn't know that, you should always reach out to your third-party processor. So the organization that actually got you the machine that you're running transactions on, they should be able to get the correct ones to you. It may be a fee. There may be a fee that they charge, and it should be minimal if there is. And if they try and charge you an arm and a leg, let someone know, and I don't know, we'll boycott them or something. Well, I'm getting sassy today. I'm sorry, everyone. This is what happens when I have caffeine.
Jan asked about PCI compliance.
Oh.
Do you want to take that one, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. So PCI compliance is tough, and everybody should be aware of this. My market's all in Michigan because of the program we're in, working, and we get equipment through Merchant Source. Everybody has to fill it out every year. The survey, thankfully, after you do it the first time, there's a survey wizard that'll help you fill it out from there. It is intense. This is a fee that they charge. I view it like an insurance fee, to help alleviate some of they claim it helps alleviate some of the liabilities on the processing company to make sure that all of the sites are following what they're claiming are best practices. So yeah, sites need to be prepared to answer these surveys on a yearly basis, if that's what the processing company requires. And here in Michigan, if you don't fill it out, it's a large fee. I believe we're up to $30 a month that they're charging sites. So that's something that I'm continually working on, to remind people to do the PCI compliance survey. And Lauren's asking a great question, if all processors are requiring it. And my answer to that is I don't think yet. But this seems to be a direction that everyone's heading. So we don't have a list of who is and who isn't, unfortunately. But this is something that, at least here in Michigan, Merchant Source emails out that information on a yearly basis and reminds you to fill it out. I was annoyed to find out that I refilled mine after 11 months, and then my new date became that 11-month date. So it wasn't. So it's like you get a 365 day from when you sign it, and then it just renews the next time you sign it. So I'll wait for 51 weeks next time.
I think we are out of time. We've got maybe a couple seconds left. So I just wanted to mention that this recording will be available in 24 hours, and we also will have the PDF of this presentation archived. And the key is that on the last slide of the PDF, we have all these links that Dar has graciously put in the chat. The FMC website's a great resource. We have a lot of webinars from Peter Relic, like I mentioned before. Dar just put in the guide site for Farm Direct incentives, which will have a lot of the resources that Joe and I have been working together on. And reach out to us. We are more than happy to talk with anyone, and we get our information from conversations with people, and that's how we learn. So we're just hoping to have an open dialogue going forward, and appreciate you all joining us for this.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. Continue the conversation. Once this Zoom closes, we got the session chat or on Slack. So we're happy to keep conversations going.
Ben, our executive director, is hosting a Farm Direct tech session at, I think, 4:15 Eastern time today. So hope to see you at that too. Bye, everyone.